finished yet.
ZenVStyle.com.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Black Agenda Podcast Live. My name is Devin Dito, and I'm always here with my co-host, Adrian Guess. And today is March 27th, 2021, and this is Weekly Roundup number 10. And we are excited to be back, bringing you all of the news from this past week. And there is plenty, so we might as well just kind of get into it. And so to start, the first thing we want to talk about, of course, is the big news, that the tragedy really that happened in Boulder, Colorado. And so for the second time in less than a week, really, I put a month, but a week, the country is dealing with yet another mass shooting. And this time it happened in Boulder, Colorado, and the suspected gunman went into a supermarket and left, 10 people dead. And so his name was Ahmad Alissa, and he would be held without bail. And that was decided on Thursday. And so Alissa faces 10 counts of first-degree murder, and the charge of attempted murder was added after Boulder police said that he actually shot back at them. He missed, but he did shoot back at the officers, and so they added an attempted murder charge. Now there are 10 victims that have been identified, and so they are 20-year-old Denny Stong, 23-year-old Nevin Stanisic, 25-year-old Ricky Olds, 49-year-old Trelona Barkowiak, I probably said that wrong, 59-year-old Suzanne Fountain, 51-year-old Terry Leaker, 61-year-old Kevin Mahoney, and then 62-year-old Lynn Murray, 65-year-old Jody Waters, and 51-year-old Boulder police officer Eric Talley. And so really just a horrific situation. And again, these have we've gotten used to these, Adrian. It seems like, we kind of got a lull, during the pandemic. People were not gathering in big crowds, so we didn't see these types of tragedies. But here we are, just getting ready to open back up. And here we are, 2 mass shootings back to back now, and 2 in a week. And so I guess, just what's, it's like we're here again. It's like deja vu, just kind of what's your reaction to this, and just, just what's your reaction, I guess, if you can put it into words.
I mean, it's a lot, Devin, to process, because we keep going through tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And you just wonder, is there ever going to be maybe a breaking point or a kumbaya moment or something like that? But when you have things like this, it just makes you wonder, what's going on. I mean, last week we talked about, what happened in Atlanta, and now here we are, another part of the country in Boulder, Colorado, talking about this. And, it definitely begs a question, Devin, where we're, trying to address, what are we going to do about it? A lot of people, always say, guns don't kill people, people kill people. But with that being said, we still got to do something. I mean, we can't just say that people are just evil and we can't do anything to apprehend that. You've got a lot of activists and definitely the Democrats who are really vowing to pass some sort of gun reform. I'm hopeful, Devin, that this is going to happen because we've got Democrats controlling the government at this point. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday morning said that he was going to bring some legislation to the Senate floor. Fortunately, we don't have Moscow Mitch anymore, who's killing every bill that's trying to bring some sort of progressive change to our country. The only thing, Devin, that's bad is the fact that Democrats don't really have the votes to get this done. We know that obviously with the Senate, it's 50-50 split. And as I've mentioned probably a dozen times by now, Joe Manchin is a stickler. And unfortunately, he's been the kind of the outlier of the Democratic Party, and they can't really get unity there. So, those are kind of some of my general thoughts, Devin. I'm hopeful that, like I said, President Biden, he's come out and said that he's going to support some things with background checks. And you just kind of wonder, Devin, what's the whole opposition against background checks? I don't understand why people, even Senator Joe Manchin, doesn't really like the House's legislation with background checks. So, Devin, I hope that we can, have some sort of legislation that helps so that we don't continue to have more tragedies that occur like this.
Right, and so like you say, we've come to this point a lot. Whether it's Newtown, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Columbine. Like we've been through this so many times, and we always expect something because the public is outraged and like, okay, what is it that we can do? And just to show people, I kind of briefly put up the mugshot, but this is the shooter, Ahmad Alyssa. I think they said he was 27, I believe. And so there he is right there. And I mean, that's the shooter. And look, he looks pretty similar to the ones we've had before. I mean, this seems to be a problem, with here in America where we have, typically white males who go out and commit these horrific acts. And, I don't know if we're going to see anything different. Like you say, President Biden has already said he's going to support the Bipartisan Background Checks Act, which would expand background checks on firearm sales, would close a gun show loophole and also an online sales loophole. It passed the House with 8 Republicans voting for it and 1 Democrat. But there's also other legislation, which is called the Enhanced Background Checks Act of 2021, which would also close another loophole dubbed the Charleston loophole, which allows gun sales to proceed without a completed background check if 3 business days have passed, and that would extend the background check review period from 3 days to 10 days so that they can actually complete it. And so President Biden also said he would support, renewing the ban on assault weapons from the 90s. And so he said we should have it. And again, like I said, this was passed in 94, and it was, in place for 10 years, and then it phased out in 2004. And I think you did see, if you look at some of the data, we did see, an uptick not only in mass shootings, but also just how awful they were. The death count really shot up. And some of that could be because, that assault rifle ban, in particular, the ban on high capacity magazines expired. And so that's a big thing. They mentioned bump stocks before, where it just allows the weapon to just fire repeatedly without stopping. And so, we just, I don't know, Adrian, we talk about what's going to happen, and the evidence really isn't clear whether if we pass the background check bills, will it stop them? Because these guys, even in this case and in El Paso, they got their weapons legally. They passed, they did it the proper way. So even if we had these background checks laws in place, is it really going to be able to prevent these types of tragedies? One new thing that's happening now is you're seeing states adopting what they call red flag laws. Mm-hmm. And so this would allow courts to issue orders to temporarily confiscate the firearms of someone that they have deemed to be a risk to others or themselves. And so in most states that have these types of laws, a family member can petition for a firearm to be removed, from this individual for a temporary amount of time. And so this is actually kind of taken on. This really took hold after the Parkland shooting down in Florida. But right now, I think we have about 17, I believe, states who actually have these types of laws in place. Connecticut was the very first one. They enacted theirs like way back in the 90s. But like I say, after Parkland, we saw more states doing this. So maybe this is something that we can try to, get more states to adopt, to where if you see something, or if you see someone in your family who is exhibiting, behaviors or just acting kind of odd, and they have these high capacity, rifles, maybe we can, go that route. Look, we're not advocating to repeal the Second Amendment. We're not advocating for Joe Biden to go door to door and take people's guns. That's it, and that's that's why I don't know if we're ready for this conversation, Adrian, because the country is so polarized. It's like one side is saying, Big Daddy Joe's gonna come take all your guns, and then the other side is saying, the right to bear arms at all costs, basically. So I don't know where where do you start?
Devin, we've done 2 podcast episodes about guns where we had someone that was an affiliate of the NRA, and then we had someone that was with NAGA, kind of the black version of it. And, both sides seem to not really be in favor for many of the reforms that are being placed out there, because they say that, a lot of these shootings, as you said, even in this case, are people who legally obtain their guns. So it's not that by having more laws on the books, you're going to prevent that. And in fact, we even talked about, I think that there were almost 200 laws on the books already about gun control. And what we were able to kind of gather from both interviews is that we've got to push it more towards gun education, gun safety, gun training. Maybe those will be some of the things that if Democrats would advocate more for that, you would have people from the NRA and other lobbyist groups kind of backing down and allowing some of these legislation to move. You'd probably have more Republicans and Senator Joe Manchin kind of coming to the table a little bit more if you start talking about, let's educate people, let's make sure people who want a gun, have the proper training. Obviously, we talked about, mental evaluations and how some people oppose that by saying there's no other recreational event that you have to do a mental evaluation. Sure. My objection to that is there's no other recreational event where you can take someone's life. I mean, I can go golfing or fishing or horseback riding, but that's usually not going to result in me killing somebody because I've got, a horse, I'm riding a horse, but with a gun, you can definitely take someone's life. So I always tell people, I'm a believer in seeing both sides, but I'm also a believer in that both sides have to compromise. You can't have it, everybody's going to get everything they want. There's got to be some sort of compromise. And to your question, yes, we've got to have a clear conversation, a serious conversation about gun control. And maybe we should change it to gun reform or gun education instead of control, because maybe that's some sort of connotation in people that they make it seem like the government's taking something away. But we're just trying to make sure that life can be preserved while also being able to bear arms and protect yourself and go and shoot recreationally and hunt and things like that. So I definitely think, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do, both sides of the coin here, and we can come out stronger. So that's, viewers, that's our little 2 cents on that part. Devin, I don't know if you had some more what you're about to say.
No.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
No, the last thing I'll just say is that, like you say, that there is a middle ground to this conversation. I think we say it almost every show. There is a middle ground between the extremes, in the country. So I think Democrats have to acknowledge that there are people who are gun owners who do the right thing. They are legally owned guns, and they do the right thing. They're not trying to go out and shoot and kill anybody. But also the people on the right, on the conservative side, have to stop this boogeyman. Oh, the government's going to come take your guns. We're going to repeal the Second Amendment. That's never going to happen. Unless the Republican Party dissolves tomorrow or something like that. It still probably wouldn't happen. Yeah. And so that's just, we have to get out of those corners. And then also, too, I think something people don't think about also, it's just, as far as us and African Americans, typically whenever something is enacted, it's pointed at us. So if some kind of gun control legislation is passed, we also have to be very careful that our communities are not picked on as far as the ones where these guns are going to be rounded up and people are going to be, stripped of their Second Amendment rights, because we don't own guns at the same rate as white Americans, but we are often the ones, seen to be criminals and things like that. So we have to be very cognizant of that as well if we do enact any kind of gun control legislation, make sure it is applied evenly and not just on minorities in black neighborhoods or Mexican neighborhoods. We make sure this is a white male problem that we seem to have, and so we have to attack the problem appropriately. So I just want to make sure we get those points out. But
No, you're right. I think that it's important to stress that, even though people may say that we come at things in a more progressive, liberal way, we always go back to the middle ground because we see both angles.
Exactly.
And another middle ground thing that we're seeing is the legalization of marijuana in the United States. More and more states are starting to kind of coalesce around this idea that recreational marijuana is okay. You've got lawmakers in New York State that have reached a deal, and this was on Wednesday, to legalize recreational marijuana. This was according to CNN. The cannabis law legislation is expected to pass next week and would even allow New Yorkers 21 and older to grow marijuana plants in their homes. The tax that they're going to propose is going to be about 13% and would actually generate about $350 million in taxes during the first year. According to a memo, the law is going to create a new Office of Cannabis Management, and it's going to oversee the licenses for growers, dispensaries, wholesalers, consumption sites, all the whole 9 yards. Basically, just setting up a new industry within New York State, and that's going to be able to have taxation that's going to go toward a lot of social programming. In fact, 40% of the profits from the industry are going to go towards social programs, 40% toward the state education lottery fund, and 20% towards education and drug treatment. I mean, there's just a lot of things to unpack within this story, Devin. Like I said, more states are doing this. I think we've got a graphic where you can see that there, where right now about 14 states in DC have recreational marijuana. Many states have decriminalized it. Many states, including our home state, Mississippi, have even made it medically legal. So it's just it's almost time, Devin. I will definitely come out and say I am a believer that recreational marijuana should be legal. I live in California where it is legal. I see all the revenue that they're getting. I mean, you look at the polling numbers, Devin. Gallup says that 68% of Americans support legal recreational marijuana. You look at the revenue that a lot of people are getting. California alone reported about, over $1 billion in revenue in 2020. Colorado, about 400 million. DC over 470 million. That's a lot of money. When you talk about a place like Mississippi, it doesn't have access to good health care, has food deserts, the roads are terrible, jobs aren't there. Think about what, millions of dollars from an industry that's already there. There's just a black market, so it's already happening. But think about how that money could really impact education, homes, businesses, and things like that. So, Devin, my thoughts on this is really, really great. I know that there are a lot of advocates against, legalization of marijuana. But I took a debate class, and we actually did an argument for and against, and we've looked at a lot of different things, and I think all the other things, as far as people talking about if you legalize it, more people are going to start smoking weed, or more people are going to start having automobile accidents. I think all of those are just maybe stereotypes that people have against, people who smoke marijuana. And they're just things that people just try to deflect to, rather than just actually going to the facts that, Colorado, California hasn't seen more, traffic accidents just because they legalized marijuana.
yeah, I mean that's like you say, those are stereotypes they're applying, and I think some of it too is the fact that when you think of marijuana and weed, you think, to me at least, you're thinking of things that black people do, and it's funny because we have presidents who will go out and say, well, yeah, I smoked a little bit of weed in college, I smoked a little bit in high school, and that's okay. It's all fun and games. But meanwhile, we've locked up millions of black people for carrying a little dime bag. So I'm happy that we finally are at the point where we understand that weed is really no different than alcohol. If you are telling me that folks can go and have a beer and get on the road and drive, then they can smoke a blunt and do the same thing. Like, I don't, and I've never understood that. But like I say, it's they criminalized something that in the black community was something that was happening, and they kept telling people it's a gateway drug, and that wasn't true. And so it's, we have to get past that. And I think too, while we're all legalizing marijuana, we need to take a look back and go start expunging people's records who have been locked up, for drug offenses, carrying a little dime bag or selling a little bit of marijuana, because it just doesn't make sense to have millions of people in jail locked up for the very substance you're legalizing, and now they're collecting millions and billions of dollars in tax revenue. Like, it just doesn't make sense how you can still have that society. And one end, this person's in jail for 10 years, and the other guy gets to go start a cannabis business, and make millions of dollars off the very thing that's locked people up. It just doesn't jive. And so it should have been legal a long time ago. We're late to the discussion, and for those who are kind of holding back, Mississippi and Alabama's, and they want to make it medical, I would just explain what's the difference between alcohol and marijuana. Like, to me, alcohol is a drug. And we have millions of college students who do it. We have millions of high school students who go drink alcohol. You don't see this type of effort to really stop that. But when it comes to weed, it's like, oh my goodness, that's like the worst thing you could ever do. And so I get it. Like, yes, and the last thing is just, as far as the effects in the black market, I think it's gonna probably still be there. I don't think everybody's gonna grow their own marijuana in their house.
Exactly.
But I do hope, I don't know if it's true, I do hope though we will see a sort of decline in this, the type of drug, gang violence where you normally see drug deals going bad and stuff like that. Maybe those little petty things will kind of cease now that people can grow weed by themselves.
The two things I would say on that, Devin, one is the fact I'm glad to see that New York has low taxes, because in California taxes are high, and because taxes are high, that makes the black market for buying weed more advantageous, because no drug dealer on the corner is charging 30% taxes. So it's good that New York is doing that. The other thing I would say is that I really, really, really hope that states do some sort of initiative to allow more of our people, who have been disenfranchised from the weed industry, to actually get the proceeds and the profits from this. Because when you look at it, most of the weed industry is monopolized. There's certain companies who go in and buy up everything, and those are the only companies that do it. But you've got somebody in New York, maybe a black business owner or a black individual who's thinking, oh, we've just legalized weed, I would like to open up a shop to make some generational wealth for my family. It's not that easy to do that, because you've got to have a lot of money to buy the licenses, to get everything and taking place, and to have your warehousing and things. So I really hope that more and more states, like I said, work on the taxes so that it can root out the black market, but also make sure that they allow the black and brown community who's in prison because of the weed industry to profit from the weed industry. So that was the last thing I was going to say on that. Because we gotta, and like you said, we gotta rectify the prison expungements and things like that. But yeah, viewers, before our break, we wanted to make sure to also pay some respects to some things that happened in the Deep South. We always like to kind of go back to home, where at least 5 people died due to tornadoes. As many as 10 tornadoes, and looks like an estimated 8 Alabamians and 2 Georgians were actually impacted by that. Really horrible thing, Devin. I mean, this happened on Thursday, uprooting 100-year-old trees, stripping roofs from homes, damaging businesses and schools. And you think about the fact that we're all going through a pandemic where we really can't afford, a natural disaster on top of all the economic stress that's going on. I think this one said it was on the ground for more than an hour and traveled more than 100 miles, causing heavy damage in the Centerville and South Tuscaloosa. Really devastating things here to kind of go on with what we've been talking about. We just wanted to make sure to express that, send thoughts and prayers to those who have been affected by the storms. Definitely thoughts and prayers to the Boulder, Colorado community who've been impacted, and definitely keep praying and sending thoughts and prayers for Atlanta, because they're still going through stuff. So we're going to take our first little break here, and when we come back, we're going to get into our second segment. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
What is Grambling? Grambling is growing. It's a community Grambling is an education, an experience. Grambling is legacy, tradition, and the future. What is Grambling? Grambling is all of this and more. Grambling is the place where everybody is somebody.
All right, welcome back. So we want to get into some more news here, and we're going to go up to St. Louis and see what's happening with their police department. So this is a case of Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle of the St. Louis County Police Department. This is a reminder that black police officers and even high-ranking police commanders still face racism, on a daily basis. And so his name is Troy Doyle. He's a 29-year police veteran. He served in numerous roles and capacities and has fought racism within the department. And he was actually the president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. And then he was also a founder of the St. Louis County Police Department Athletic League. And so this Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle has actually now had to file a lawsuit alleging that County Executive Sam Page backtracked on a plan to appoint him as the first black police chief of the department after Page received, pushback from influential corporate donors. And so those entities include the St. Louis Police Foundation, which provides funding to the St. Louis County and Metropolitan Police Departments. And their board consists of mostly white corporate CEOs. And then the other entity is Civic Progress, now known as Greater St. Louis, Inc., which represents the St. Louis business community. And so I would imagine that their makeup is probably the same as the board of the St. Louis Police Foundation. But this Sam Page here, who according to Troy Doyle feared losing campaign contributions, was reportedly shocked and felt like he was living in the 60s based on these unnamed donors' reactions to the prospect of Doyle as a black police chief. And so these individuals actually allegedly asked Page, what he was going to do with the black guy, and hoped Page didn't make him chief. And so Troy Doyle also alleges that these donors exerted influence on the county board of police commissioners who were appointed by the county executive and approved by the county council to select a white candidate. And a white board member actually said the county, quote, did not need a black police chief. And this is according to Troy Doyle's petition. And so last year, the board actually lowered the standards for the top cop job, and they now only require their candidates to only hold the rank of captain rather than lieutenant colonel. And so in the end, Captain Mary Barton, a white woman of lower rank, was actually chosen to be police chief instead of Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle. And so Barton, the new chief now, her brother-in-law was actually fired as a police dispatcher for blasting the N-word over the radio. She insists that there is no systemic police racism in St. Louis. And she said this, and this is all coming after last year, where the St. Louis County, St. Louis County actually settled for over $10 million with a police sergeant who claimed discrimination because he was gay. And so, Adrian, it's like, we're again, deja vu. We talk about these things. We try to tell people these things are real. They're out there. But, here we are again having to explain that racism still does exist. And just, what are your thoughts there about what's happening to Officer Doyle?
Devin, you would think that, here we are in 2021. We had 2020 where we had so much civil unrest because of racism. You would think that a police department would take a more progressive stance to have a black police chief. They would take more of a stance to try to rectify some of the historical injustices that have been put on our community. but yet they feared losing donor contributions and different things like that versus trying to be on the right side of history. So that's my initial thoughts and my first take on that. It is not shocking or surprising. I mean, it's yet again another story of racism in America. We talk so heavily about how racism is really embedded or woven into the very fabric of America, and this is evidence of that. Someone who has definitely shown his worth. I mean, 29-year veteran, led, was president of this organization, founded, their athletic league. I mean, definitely someone that has integrity, has character, has, some clout within the community. Definitely would, be a shoo-in to rise up in the ranks and be the police chief. But, this is just another example. I mean, you even provided, the account from last year of the discrimination due to someone being gay. So it's not outlandish for us to, imagine that if they don't want someone, gay to rise up, they probably don't want someone black to rise up either. And that just goes to the vast narrative of, America not really wanting to recognize minorities as a large. And, viewers, that's why Devin and I, we always talk on the Black Agenda, how even though Black is in our name, we like to talk on how these issues, whether it be in the Black community, gay community, Asian community, how they really slow down societal progress. Because when we have things like this, we even put, trillions of dollars to, the price tag to racism. So we know that there's a huge cost to that, and there's huge ramifications on the impact of what happens to people's livelihood. So, yeah, I hope that, Devin, that, this lawsuit, will bring, Officer Doyle some sort of justice. Maybe he can, get put in the position he deserves, or at least get some sort of equity and go into an organization and, fight some change in police departments around the country.
Right. I think, the question, are we being honest with ourselves when we talk about racism? I don't think so. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, like the new chief of police up there, Mary Barton, who says there is no systemic racism problem in the police department. Well, I mean, it seems to be some kind of problem going on, because it seems like we're not picking the most qualified people. He's been a lieutenant colonel. He's been with them for a very long time. Like you say, he's been president. He's got the credentials. Like, this is not a question of whether or not he's qualified. That's not what they said. They said, what are you going to do with the black guy? They didn't say, what are you going to do with the unqualified guy? They noted his color. And so that's the problem, is that we see this play out not only in our police departments, but, and CEOs and head coaches in the NFL, NBA, college, whatever. It seems like when you hit a ceiling, when you are a person of color or African American or black, you hit a ceiling. You only get to go so far, because once you get up the ranks and you start to get in control of things, then you become a threat. You make people uncomfortable. They only are comfortable with us having so much power, where you see in this case, they started using donor dollars to threaten to say, hey, we're going to pull your funding, Mr. Page, if you don't select somebody else of a different hue. And it all comes down to just an old attitude, that, we are not to be in control of this country. We can live here. We can build it. We can play on their football teams. We can be police officers on the force. But you will not be in control of it, though. At the end of the day, they want to retain that power, and there are old attitudes, not even, I don't know what, the age of the people who were donating this money, of the donors, but it's an attitude that's been passed down that we need to honestly get rid of. And the only way we can do that is being honest with ourselves and say, yes, we still have a racism, a problem here. We're not saying the entire country is racist, but it's not an accident that it's 2021 and St. Louis hasn't had a black police chief. And when they were getting ready to get their very first one, this happens. These things don't happen, by accident. We don't get the law in Georgia by accident. No, these are real issues that still need to be worked out. And, I hope, like you say, Officer Doyle gets, the equity that he's looking for, and hopefully he gets compensated, or I don't know if they'll put him in the position. They've already chosen Miss Barton there, but, it happened even here in Dallas and Fort Worth. I think there was a case where there was going to be a black, police chief, and he didn't get that job either. And I think he ended up suing as well. I'm not sure if he was successful, but these things play out all the time. And like I say, there's a ceiling there as far as how far they will let you go. And so we have to make sure we call it out and we continue to fight and push forward to ensure that things like this, just we need to get past this if we're going to ever come together as a country for real and be able to have the type of, melting pot that we're looking for, I guess.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's another sad story that just displays racism, and I mean that can't be reiterated enough. That we've got to get past this. Got to give people, no matter who they are, if they're black, gay, female, transgender, doesn't matter. If they're qualified for the job, if they've worked hard for the job, give it to them, give them their due. I mean, once they get in there, if they prove themselves to be unqualified, then you have something to say, oh, well, we wanted to give you the chance, but because of this or that, you can't do it. And then you've been justified. It's not about, being black or something like that. So I really hope that there will be some justice, out of this resolution. Speaking of justice, we got, word that Jacob Blake's going to be suing the officer that shot him. Records show that, that this is taking place. The case shows that he's being sued for excessive force in a federal case. And obviously, Devin, that's very clear when you've got the fact that Blake survived the shooting but is paralyzed from the waist down. Really bad, situation, because we all saw the video. We all know what was going on here. The suit is asking for damages in a fair and just amount sufficient to the compensation for the injuries that Blake suffered, plus a substantial sum for punitive damages, because obviously there's been, some things that he's having to do to recover from. We've seen, Ben Crump on the scene for a lot, and he's here on this scene, along with two other attorneys who are filing the suit here. Looks like the suit alleges that Blake made no physical or verbal threats toward any police officer during the incident and repeatedly attempted to disengage by walking away from the violent attack perpetrated by the aggressive police officers. So, Devin, we've heard the narrative. We've seen what's going on. Unfortunately, the DA did come out and say that they're not going to really charge any officers because Blake, was, armed with the knife and resisted arrest. So it said they couldn't really argue against the fact that the officers were acting in self-defense. So they weren't going to charge, I guess, criminally in that regard, but they are pushing some of these other charges. So viewers will make sure to keep you updated on that. Devin, you got any thoughts on what's going on with Jacob Blake?
No, other than he deserves whatever compensation, that he gets. And, like I say, we'll definitely update that. But I do hope he gets, what he deserves. And just kind of staying, in the legal system and what's happening there. We have been doing our HBCU awareness series, so we've been focusing on colleges a lot. So we did notice a story out of Southern California where a prestigious institution that likes to boast about their accomplishment and accolades is actually now having to settle for more than $1 billion to former patients of a campus gynecologist, George Tyndall. And so this was the largest sex abuse payout in higher education history. The huge sum was revealed Thursday in Los Angeles Superior Court as lawyers for a final group of 710 women suing the university told the judge they had settled their claims for $852 million. And so USC had actually previously agreed to pay thousands of other alumni and students $215 million in 2018, and that was a federal class action settlement. And so a group of about 50 other cases were settled for an amount that was not made public, but the sheer number of potential victims, some 17,000 women that were treated by this gynecologist, George Tyndall, over 3 decades, also made a massive settlement inevitable. And so the sole full-time gynecologist at the Student Health Clinic was George Tyndall from 1989 until 2016. And then after, he was accused of preying on a generation of USC women. And so this was after, I think this was the LA Times exposed his troubled history at the university 3 years ago. The 74-year-old was stripped of his medical license finally and arrested. He's pled not guilty to dozens of sexual assault charges and is awaiting trial. And so the USC settlement dwarfs recent payouts and in other university scandals. Another high-profile one was at Michigan State, where they paid $500 million in connection with Larry Nassar's sexual abuse of gymnasts and others. And then also Penn State had to settle claims related to Jerry Sandusky's sexual abuse trial, which they settled that for more than $109 million. So they're not even touching USC at $1.1 billion being paid out because of sexual abuse by the gynecologist George Tyndall. And so we're glad, of course, that these women are getting the justice they deserved. And so we hope this is a signal, to others, out there, that they can speak out, and the signal to those who are doing these types of things to know that they will have to stop, or your day in court will come. You could be 74 years old. You could be 104 years old. Your day in court will come, and you will pay, the price for what the crimes that you committed. So any thoughts on that, Adrian, before we go on the break?
Other than I'm glad to see that, this is coming to light, because it's, I've been going on for a long, long time that he was, the gynecologist here. So, and these are just the potential women that he could have harmed. So who knows how many else are out there who maybe didn't have the strength to come forward. So really, really glad to see that they are getting some justice out of that.
Right. And so as we go into break, but right before we go into break, we have one more story here for you. So columnist and former NBA All-Star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar will be executive producing Fight the Power, the protest that changed America, with Deborah Morales for the A&E Network's History Channel. And this is according to Deadline. And so it's a 1-hour documentary that will examine the effect that key protests have had over the time of evolution of America, to explore the question, does the arc of the moral universe bend towards justice when pressure is applied? And so this collaboration is the second between the NBA legend and the History Channel, having previously paired up on 2020's 1-hour documentary, Black Patriots, Heroes of the Revolution. And so just give you an update there. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar executive producing another documentary, Fight the Power, the protest that changed America. And that's going to be with Deborah Morales, and you'll see that on the History Channel probably later this year. And so take that with you as you go into the break. And we're going to take another break here. And when we come back, we'll get into some more news out of Detroit. So stick with us, and we'll be right back.
Here at Tuskegee University, some of our historical figures like Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, those are some of the people that created or started that Tuskegee experience.
This place is so different. You have a support system, a real support system. We may ball and parlay, but the most important thing we do is graduate. And after we graduate, we accelerate in everything we do.
Viewers, welcome back to our third segment here. We wanted to take you to Detroit because we've got some really, really nice news that I, hope to see, throughout all of the country because we really, really need our top, 1% to start doing things like this. So we've got a billionaire businessman whose companies have really energized Detroit's downtown and have announced that they're going to be doing a $500 million fund to improve neighborhoods. This was made on Thursday. And they're going to start by doing $15 million that's going to go towards paying off the property tax debt of 20,000 of the city's poorest homeowners. The money is coming from two philanthropic organizations connected to Quicken Loans founder Dan Gilbert, who announced the plan. The $15 million Detroit tax relief fund will leverage existing state and local programs that eliminate or reduce property tax bills, then pay off the remaining tax bill. It will be administered by a local nonprofit that will provide counseling to homeowners to give them to keep them out of future property tax debt. Other potential uses of the $500 million funding have not been announced as of Thursday. But Devin, just from the start of this, you're seeing that this is going to be something that really helps with generational wealth, because we've talked, and we're actually going to be releasing an episode about homeownership. We've talked about how that is something that builds equity, that a Black family, could pass down to the next generation and really sets them up for the future, because what the top 1% is doing. You've got 1/3 of the properties in Detroit have had these issues with back property taxes, interest accruing and penalties, and cause all kinds of hardships. This is what Gilbert was saying, and that's kind of the reason why they wanted to do this. Rather he wanted to do this was to really help with a lot of those issues that have affected Detroit. And I know, Devin, Detroit's not the only city that's, being affected by these issues. So hoping, again, that we can really start to see this to happen, more throughout. Wayne County, home to Detroit, will also invest $5 million in foreclosure prevention. That's a huge deal, especially with the pandemic, because we've seen a lot of people who've struggled to pay their mortgages and had to have foreclosures. So, having an extra $5 million towards that, it's going to be really, really great. County Executive Warren Aaron said that during the Great Recession, 1 in 4 properties in Detroit went into foreclosure. So I can only imagine what that's looking like now with the pandemic. But thank goodness we've got people like Dan Gilbert, who is, trying to come in, know that he's, wealthy, billionaire. If you've got, B in front of your title like that, you probably got some funds to do it. But aside from that, Devin, he's taking the initiative to set something up that's going to really, really transform, communities for generations to come. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a really great program, and it's good to see him doing some good. I know I don't have the best impression of Dan Gilbert because he is the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and so he kind of ran LeBron out of town. So I do know Dan Gilbert for that reason, but I'm glad to see that he is getting involved here. And like you say, hitting at the heart of the problem, which is home ownership. And like they were saying, 1 in 4 properties in Detroit went into foreclosure during the Great Recession. We lost 50% of Black wealth because of the financial crisis in a recession. So obviously there is a need out there for these types of programs, and they're hitting right at it, paying off property tax debt, but also the counseling to ensure that these folks don't go back into property tax debt and things like that. And you're also seeing the county get involved. So it at least seems to me this is a full-throated effort from everybody to try to help the folks who really, really need it, the poorest homeowners out there, because your home should be an asset. It should not be a stressor. It should not be something that's an albatross across your neck and you're having to worry about, am I going to be able to afford my taxes, and I can't afford to make the repairs. Like you say, the home should be an asset. You can take equity out and do things, start a business, send a kid to college, and it should not be, this burden that people are having to carry around, because that's really not what it should be. But again, a recession put people in a difficult position. The pandemic obviously didn't help. It probably worsened it. So I'm really glad to see this. And yes, more celebrities, more of the 1%, the billionaires should be getting involved like this. Because this is how we get that change. Like you say, start building that generational wealth, and they don't have to be Black. We can take it from anybody. We need help. We're not in the business of picking and choosing the type of help that we need. If it comes in the form of Dan Gilbert and $500 million, we're going to take it. Because despite whatever you think about Dan Gilbert, these types of programs will have a lasting effect way after we leave and Dan Gilbert leaves. The homes that these folks own will hopefully continue to be in the hands of the family that owns them, and they can start taking out equity and start doing things and start building that wealth. And so I love it, and I hope we see more of it, around the country. And so We're going to go from Detroit. We're going to go all the way down, to the south to the biggest story of the week, which is Georgia and its state legislature in Atlanta. And so we want to come at this from a different angle. And so we all know Georgia just passed their voting restriction law. And so we already are kind of seeing some rumblings here that Major League Baseball may actually start to have talks to move their All-Star game from Atlanta. And so it's the 91st MLB All-Star game is scheduled to be played in Atlanta in July. But on Thursday, in the wake of this voting restriction legislation that was signed by the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, the executive director of the MLB Players Association, Tony Clark, said the players are ready. They are ready to discuss moving their annual midsummer exhibition out of Georgia. And so, Adrian, this is huge. I mean, hopefully this, gets things churning. And so if you want, you can kind of tell the people, I know we've talked about this Georgia bill, but you give them a reminder of some of the awful, terrible things that are in there.
Devin, it's not, a stretch to say that this bill is awful. It makes it really,
Yes.
It makes it harder for people to vote because there's already enough laws on the books to make it to where, you already have to do enough to vote. But in the terms of absentee ballots, the new law does away with the signature matching to identify voters who are trying to do an absentee ballot. Instead, you've got to provide the numbers to your driver's license or state identification, along with some other information like date of birth and such. If you can't, provide those, you can submit documents like a copy of bank statements or current utility bills. Another thing is about the provisional ballots. People before, if they went to the wrong precinct and voted, that ballot could still be counted after it went through that process. But now the new law just rules out any sort of out of precinct vote cast before 5 p.m. Another thing that made it easier for them to mobilize the vote was the RV size mobile voting units, but they've done away with those. Drop boxes. They've made the drop boxes inside of early voting locations instead of, being outside where anyone can access them. So that's not as useful. And the law makes it to where early voting hours must run between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And 5 p.m. people are still at work. And if you've got a normal job, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you can't really do anything unless your employer allows you to take off for work. The law does give a little bit of flexibility to extend that to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But remember those long lines, Devin, that we saw in Georgia. Mm-hmm. So just extending it by that point is probably not going to help with those long lines. The laws just really go to the challenge. The last thing that the law does is it allows Georgians to challenge the voting eligibility of unlimited number of voters. So I guess you can be any Georgia resident, and if you want to challenge, somebody's vote or their eligibility to vote, you can do that, and you can do it for an unlimited amount of times. And if the county tries to do anything, well, the state election board can sanction the county for refusing to allow you to challenge somebody's right to vote. It's just crazy. We even reported earlier, Devin, on the fact that it makes it illegal to give people food and water who are standing in line. So it just shows you how, I know that one's a really, really silly one. It just shows you how Republicans are stretching to really make it to where Black and brown people have a harder opportunity to vote, because that's what this is about. We saw it with 2020, Black and brown people stood up, Black voices really got out the charge under Stacey Abrams' direction and, got 2 Georgia Democratic senators, flipped Georgia for President Biden, and Republicans are mad. There's this backlash, this white lash that we continue to see whenever minority groups finally voice their opinions, take back their rights, take back their freedoms. But you see here, corporate America or different organizations are stepping up to say, all right, if you're going to infringe upon the people's right to vote, we even talked about last week where we were talking about corporate responsibility with diversity. We need more organizations. We need more institutions to take a stand when Republicans or Democrats or whoever enact a law that takes away someone's freedoms. We need the MLB to continue to do this. And when we saw the NBA do this in 2016 with Charlotte, North Carolina, because of their discriminatory practices. So we've got to see this, because we know, Devin, we live in a capitalist society. Money makes things happen. So when you've got people moving things, taking out some of that revenue that would come because of this all-star event, I guarantee you'll probably see some changes maybe in what Georgia's doing.
Oh, you absolutely would. I think the biggest thing that could happen is if the film industry decides, hey, we're going to move out of here, because that's been a boom now for Georgia.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And so that's, to me, that's where that's who has the real power, because that has been a humongous thing that's happening for their economy. So if the film industry say, you know what, we're not going to film in Georgia until you repeal the law. There is no replace. Repeal it. Because it's just blatant. They're not even trying to hide it. Like, the election was 5 months ago, and here we are, March of 2021. We need a new, voting restriction. They didn't even wait. The ink hasn't dried on the votes that were counted last year, and they're already trying to change the rules of the game because they lost. I mean, it's like some of the rules that they are repealing right now, the Republicans in Georgia enacted these same rules a few years ago, particularly when it comes to the mail-in voting, because they thought it was going to help them. But all of a sudden now, when black people and Democrats realize, hey, mail-in voting could actually help us, we can use this, now all of a sudden we want to repeal it.
Problem.
Now it's a problem. No, it's just blatant, almost election tampering. But they're sore losers. They lost the election. Like you say, black and brown people showed up to the polls like they didn't expect, and they lost, and now they want to go and cry and change the rules of the game. And listen, you can change the rules of the game a million ways, but guess what? Stacey Abrams and the rest of those activists down there, they're just going to continue to beat you at your own game. Like, you can do what you want, and hopefully we end up repealing this ridiculous law, but understand this is not going to be the end of it. Stacey Abrams will probably run for governor again, and this is going to be fire. This is going to be fuel to the anger that was already present when Donald Trump got to talking about election fraud and it being rigged, and saying that you couldn't trust Democratic-run cities where typically most black people stay. This is just fuel for the midterms. Like, I get it, but I don't understand it also in that Republicans had record turnout as well during the election. So you could be shooting yourself in the foot as well. It just didn't make sense, the strategy here, because it just seems as though they are just totally not interested in having to appeal to any other voter other than white voters. That's all they care about. They are okay with not having any kind of black people and Latinos. They're like, we are okay appealing to white people in Georgia who have anxious and anxiety about the fact that they may be losing their political power to the minorities in the state or the country. And so that's the Republican Party now. It's blatant in your face. They showed us who they are. And like I said, we're going to beat them at their own game again. But it's just, hopefully these companies in the film industry and MLB, and I saw somebody was calling out Coca-Cola as well. We should also call out the companies who donate to the politicians who are in the Georgia legislature as well. Dig into those numbers, and if you see a company there, don't buy there. Don't do business there. Call them out for what they're doing, because this is just outright election tampering, rigging, whatever you call it. Donald Trump was right. The election is rigged. It's just rigged by Republicans, not Democrats. That's
what everyone should have been noticing throughout 2020. We reported constantly, even in California, my home state, where you had Republicans putting fake, drop boxes up, so it's like they're the ones that are rigging the election, not the Democrats, not the progressives, not black folks, brown folks, it's Republicans. So, but before we go into our break, we wanted to talk, because we've done some reporting about this in the past, but reparations. And then the first city is actually starting to pay out reparations. This is out of Illinois. Evanston, Illinois, on Monday became the first U.S. city to make reparations available to its black residents for past discrimination and the lingering effects of slavery. It's a Chicago suburb, and their city council voted 8-1 to distribute $400,000 to eligible black households. Each qualifying household will receive $25,000 for home repairs or down payments on property. The program is being funded through donations and revenue from a 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana. Hey, we can see, recreational marijuana coming back again. The city has pledged to distribute $10 million over 10 years. qualifying residents must either have lived in or been a direct descendant of a Black person who lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969 and who suffered discrimination in housing because of city ordinances, policies, and practices. So great to see this, Devin. Really nice to see that they're using funds from recreational marijuana. Just another, way that this kind of ties into our reporting with New York and how this is a way that we can start to see reparations being paid out. Just like I said, if Black people have been disenfranchised so heavily from the weed industry, use the proceeds to help them. And this is, Illinois doing that. So viewers, we just wanted to report that. We're going to take our last break, and always we like to end it with our quick hits, where we're going to bring you some things around the country, maybe around the world. We'll see. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Xavier was something different. It was the experience that you needed with the challenge that you wanted. It's how you leave ready.
I guess I was destined to go to Xavier.
They really do help us for the real world.
The network of Black physicians that Xavier has is tremendous.
They're not just focused on the now, they're focused on the now and the future.
25 years later, I graduated from the same pharmacy school that my father graduated from.
That's the best decision in my life I could have made.
All right, welcome back. So as always, we like to end the show with some quick hits, which is some news you may have heard about, some things you may not have heard about. And so we want to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on with March Madness. So of course, that's all the rage right now. Everything's happening with the tournament. And so we did want to kind of take a look and kind of show you the brackets, give you the latest on what's happening. So we're going to try to something a little different here. See if we can show. It's not showing. Give me 1 second here. We're going to fix it. There it is. All right, so this is the current bracket. As you can see right now, this is the men's side. So we're going to start with the men's teams here. But what you can see is here, earlier today we saw Baylor put out Villanova 62-51, and we also saw Oral Roberts and Arkansas just ended a few minutes ago. Arkansas squeaked it out by 2. And then earlier today we also saw Loyola Chicago, Cinderella, did actually have to exit the tournament. They lost to Oregon State. And then tomorrow, later tonight, actually, you'll see Syracuse and Houston. They play at 9:55. It's a pretty late game. And then, so the upcoming schedule, at least for the men's side of the tournament, is tomorrow we have, you can look forward to seeing Gonzaga and Creighton. They play at 2:10 p.m. This is all Eastern, 2 o'clock Eastern. You'll also get to see Michigan versus Florida State. At 5 o'clock on CBS, and then Alabama versus UCLA on TBS at 7:15. And then the last game tomorrow for the men's side is going to be number 6 USC versus Oregon, all Pac-12 matchup there, and that is going to happen at 9:45 p.m. Eastern on TBS. And so now we're going to flip over to the women's side, and so here is the bracket there. So you see here, earlier we did see UConn defeat Iowa. That was a pretty exciting game. A lot of folks were looking forward to that. And then also we saw earlier, where is it at? NC State, the number 1 seed actually got put out the tournament by number 4 seed Indiana, 73-70. So that's a pretty big upset. And then as you see right here, currently Arizona and Texas A&M are currently playing. Arizona is up by 8. That's a number 3 seed Arizona versus number 2 seed Texas A&M. And so as far as what's coming up tomorrow, you can watch number 4 Indiana versus, well, we saw that. It was earlier. But tomorrow you'll see number 5 Georgia Tech taking on the number 1 seed South Carolina and Don Staley. That'll happen on ABC. Again, that's 1 p.m. Eastern. The next matchup will be Missouri State versus #1 Stanford at 3 o'clock on ABC. And then the last two matchups is Oregon versus Louisville at 7 on ESPN. And then lastly, rounding it out, Texas versus Maryland at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So a lot going on as far as the March Madness. I did not get to make a bracket this year, so I'm tuned in, but I'm not really tuned in this time. But it is still exciting nonetheless. One of my favorite times of the year.
With my prediction from the Super Bowl, I feel like I should have had a bracket. I could have maybe. So I don't know anything about sports. I didn't know much about the Super Bowl, but I was real close. So maybe I need to start doing it anyway. Another story, and this is really admirable of Sesame Street to be doing this. Really great to finally see this, because I was starting to think, Devin, whenever we were getting ready to do this story, has Sesame Street ever had a Black Muppet before? And I guess not, because viewers, they're going to be introducing two new Muppets, a Black father and son, as part of an effort to help educate children over racial literacy. The two Muppets, Wes and Elijah, were announced in a short video created by Sesame Workshop, which is a nonprofit educational organization behind the long-running show. In the video, Elmo wants to know why Wes's skin is brown, so the father, Elijah, explains the concept of melanin and how the color of our skin is an important part of who we are. This was according to a press release put out by Sesame Workshop. Sesame Workshop also released a music video to the song Giant, where the Sesame Street Muppets celebrate their own unique identities. Another video featuring Rosita and her mother was actually celebrating them speaking Spanish while Rosita was trying to cope after a racist incident. Additional new resources to support families who want to discuss race and racism with their children have been released as a part of Sesame Workshop's Coming Together series. According to a press release, the series is rooted in extensive research and consultation with experts to develop a groundbreaking racial justice educational framework and curriculum for children. Maybe something we can see maybe within our schools, because that would be really great. Resources are going to be available in English and Spanish, so they'll be able to be widely distributed and available for national and communal providers and reach. According to a recent study by Sesame Workshop, racism was actually top of mind for nearly half of the children surveyed. So really evident, really clear to see that racism is an issue that we have to address. Children have it on their minds, so we applaud Sesame Workshop and Sesame Street for their efforts in trying to educate racial literacy.
Wow, really great story there. Look at them. I like that. So our next quick hit here is just, we do like to give you tips. I know this is not the most exciting thing. It's about healthcare, but just for those people out there who may be going without insurance, like myself, there is some news here, and so some good news here. And so now after the American Relief Plan, the new stimulus bill that just passed, in it was some more funding, and then they kind of changed the rules for who can qualify to get a subsidy for your healthcare insurance. And so these new lower insurance costs began on April 1, and the premiums will decrease an average of $50 a month per person. And this is according to the Department of Health and Human Services. But some people could actually save hundreds of dollars each month thanks to these new rules. And so just to give you an idea, a single person earning about $51,500 or a family of four with a household income of $106,000, which is 4 times the federal poverty level, will actually be able to get this assistance for the first time ever. This is why I was excited about it, because I just barely got in. And so people who if you already have health insurance through the exchange, you can go back and apply the new subsidies to your existing plan to lower your monthly payments, or you can just switch plans, which would allow you to buy a new plan with a much lower deductible, but with a higher subsidy covering the plan's higher premium. And so traditionally, under the Affordable Care Act, about 14% of people using the marketplace can buy a mid-level plan for about $10 or less a month. But with these new rules, we're looking at more than half of the people who buy off the exchange can qualify for a mid-level plan of $10 or less, which is a humongous difference. And HHS also estimates about 3 million people without insurance are actually now newly eligible for these subsidies. So if you haven't already, go to healthcare.gov, create an account, and apply for some insurance and see what you can qualify for as far as a healthcare subsidy. You might be surprised. And definitely, we urge everybody, get insurance. You're going to need it. The pandemic showed you need some kind of safety net there. Also, you do have until May 15th for the special enrollment period that President Biden signed, through executive order. So you have until May 15th to go in, apply, get your subsidy, and get some health insurance there. So get covered.
Yeah, Devin, I work in the insurance. I don't sell health insurance, but I do work in the insurance industry. I'm always educating people on it. So viewers, this is, really, really big, $10 or less a month. I know a lot of people who are spending, most of their paycheck on health insurance a month for their families. So you need to be taking advantage of this if you haven't already. One thing you might not need to take advantage of is a law in North Carolina that allows you to have a venomous snake as a pet. That's a law they have on the books there. And this next quick hit is a really good example of why you may not need to take advantage of that. There was a man that came into the University of North Carolina Rex Healthcare Center in Raleigh, North Carolina, after he reported being bitten by his pet green mamba. So I'm assuming maybe it's not as venomous as the black mamba, but the green mamba has got mamba in the name. So it's a rural venomous species that's native to Africa. The healthcare center had to actually contact the Riverbank Zoo in Columbia, South Carolina, to get any venom because I guess they didn't have any on file, which normally most hospitals probably don't. They said that a cooler packed with 10 vials of any venom was flown via helicopter to the healthcare center, where doctors used 4 of those vials to actually treat the man who was bitten by the green mamba. Sean Foley, who was a curator for the Riverbank Zoo, said that the mamba's venom can be very deadly. He says if you're bitten by a green mamba without any venom, your chances of survival are very low. So, so we can kind of see that there. The man is expected to make full recovery and be back at home. Get this, Devin, he's going to be back home with his snake. Even though the snake bit him, put him in the hospital, he had to have any venom flown in from another state to get treated. He's still going to go back home and be with the snake. So I'm not sure why, again, you would keep a venomous snake in your home, and definitely not sure why you would keep him after it's bit you. So I don't know, maybe they've got some bonding to do, Devin.
Maybe he's hoping that the snake apologizes for doing that.
Yes, I don't know much about snakes, but from what I can gather when I go to a zoo, I don't feel like they can ever get attached to a person like a dog or even a cat.
Not at all. Not at all. So our next story here, our next quick hit here comes out of the HBCU financial world here. So this is another way HBCUs are doing things in the community. Aside from education, one way they help out is through partnerships with financial institutions like Bank of America. And so the Black Economic Alliance Foundation, Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Bank of America have announced plans to develop the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, which would be the first ever academic center to assemble, educate, and empower a new class of Black entrepreneurial talent. And so it's going to be co-located on the Morehouse and Spelman campuses. And the Center for Black Entrepreneurship is powered by $10 million in funding from Bank of America, which will support the development of an academic curriculum, faculty recruitment, co-curricular programming, and the development of new physical space. And so Dr. David A. Thomas, who is the president of Morehouse College, said the Center for Black Entrepreneurship adds important capacity to support our work with minority-owned businesses and current or future entrepreneurs who are looking to gain access to capital, creating jobs, and leveraging technology. And then also, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, who's the president of Spelman, added that our students will learn to build strong businesses and create wealth for their families and their communities, all while obtaining a first-rate liberal arts education. And so it's really awesome to see things like this. Again, this is how HBCUs are getting involved and trying to get on the ground level to help our communities. So we hope to have Morehouse and Spelman in our next HBCU series for next year, and hopefully they can come to talk to us about how the center is taking off. So really great story there.
Yeah, Devin, I hope that they're listening because I did send them emails to both institutions. I hope they're listening. They need to go back and watch, the work that we've done this year and be on board for next year. Our last story to round off our quick hits is a really interesting story about a Florida woman who was found naked in a storm drain after being missing for 3 weeks. So the woman was pulled from a team of rescuers out of the storm drain on Tuesday after having been missing for 3 weeks. Authorities said a passerby called 911 after hearing the 43-year-old Lindsay Kennedy calling for help within an 8-foot pit. This was about 9 a.m. In Delray Beach, so I don't know what was going on there. Police and firefighters removed the cap, lowered the ladder, and harnessed and pulled her to safety. And she actually had been there for so long that she was so weak she couldn't stand her home. She was seen with dirt, obviously, and her knees were scraped and different things like that. And the authorities took her to a local nearby hospital. She had actually been missing since March 3rd. Although authorities were not really sure how much time she had spent in the pit. She told investigators that she became trapped after exploring a tunnel she found while swimming in a canal near her boyfriend's home. After several turns in the tunnel system, she told police that she became lost. Her mother did note to investigators that her daughter has a history of mental illness, so maybe that could have attributed to some of this, but thank goodness she was discovered. I mean, 3 weeks in a storm drain, getting lost in an 8-foot pit. I mean, that sounds like a nightmare, a movie in the making or something like that. So really, really glad that she got rescued from that. But Devin, that does, and this is perfect timing. We, news was right at an hour, quick hits was right at 15 minutes, and now we're at the ending. So viewers, Devin and I, we're really happy we're actually, after so many weekly roundups, we're on time today. We're not on that CP time that some people would say. But just to kind of round it off and give you some foresight into what we're going to be doing. Remember, we've been doing our HBCU awareness series. Hey, amazing series. Devin was really, really ambitious and wanted to put this together. And I say yes, because Devin's awesome, has great ideas. And we put together a package of 11 schools, where the last one's going to be with Dr. Thomas Hudson, who's the president of Jackson State University. That's going to be airing on this upcoming Tuesday, March 30th at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can go to Facebook, YouTube. It's also going to be on our podcasting directories. He's going to deliver our final insights to kind of round off our State of the Union our State of the Nation's HBCUs. So definitely mark your calendars for that. And then for our regular fans, we're going to get back to our normal lineup on April 6th. Got a lot of different programming that we're going to be releasing for the remaining part of this season. Some awesome individuals to highlight, some great topics to cover. Make sure you stick with us on that. We're going to be letting you know more about that on our next weekly roundup. And speaking of weekly roundup, don't forget, next Saturday, we're going to be back. Weekly Roundup number 11, bringing you the latest breaking news. Hopefully, we won't be talking about shootings. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we can have some kumbaya moments and have some better news for you. But that's going to be happening next Saturday, April 3rd at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And as always, Devin, you talk so much about how this venture is not free. So please inform our fans about that again.
So yes, this venture here at the Black Agenda Podcast is not free. We don't like to beg, but we do appreciate, the support that we do get from our listeners and our viewers here. And so I'm getting up our site here, but we do have some ways that you can give to us. And that's from helping us to fund various, moving pieces just to make the podcast, but also to help us partner with other organizations like charities and things like that. And so this is, whatever you give would be absolutely appreciated. Not only does it show your appreciation for what we're doing, but it gives us the potential to go even further than we originally imagined. And so be sure you can click on the link here. I'll put it in the comment section, but also you can go to blackagendapod.com, and you can actually go and click donate. And so I'm going to show it to you here. And then it's pretty awesome too, because now you can see our HBCU awareness series is has been uploaded. So now you see all those beautiful logos of our HBCUs that we've talked to with Xavier, Clark Atlanta, Hampton, Claflin, and Fisk. And you can see it right there. It's blackagendapod.com. If you go up to the right here in the middle, it says donate. If you click that button, it's going to take you to our patron account on Podbean, and you can give us $1, $5, $100 if you're feeling really generous. And so we would appreciate anything. I know we all just got stimulus checks, so you may have a little extra to give for us this time. But again, that's blackagendapod.com. Give us a few dollars. We would absolutely appreciate it. So the other thing, like I said, we're trying to pair with charities now. So our charity for April, this is our last show of March. And so our charity for April is going to be Strive. And so it's an organization called Strive. They have a 36-year track record of serving people who face the greatest obstacles of employment. And so Strive helps the population seeking a better life and acquiring the skills and attitudes that they need to find, sustained employment. So the majority of people who walk through our doors, they say, have no source of income yet. The majority of graduates go on to gain meaningful employment and achieve economic self-sufficiency. So here it is again. We're going to show you their website. Just you go check it out. Maybe also give them a few dollars because they're doing some incredible work there. You can see it right there. Strive, together we strive, equality for all. Focus on trying to get people sustained employment. So they're doing some great work there. So if you can go to, I believe it was strive.org, and check them out. They're doing some pretty great work, and hopefully we can get them, on the show, and they can tell us about, some of the other things that they're doing at Strive. And so that's going to do it for us. As always, we like to end the show. Just, you see it up at the top there. I'm pointing in the wrong direction, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Black Agenda Pod. Make sure you share this live stream. Share any of our content. We got, like Adrian said, 11 interviews with HBCU presidents that you can go back and watch now. And again, at Black Agenda Pod is where you can find us. Like, share, follow. You can find us on YouTube now. We have plenty of great content also. And so that's going to do it for us. We'll be back next Saturday at 7:30 p.m. to be bringing you more of the news and everything that's going on around the country. So again, we appreciate you watching and staying up with us, and we'll catch you next time.